Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to be discussing what I think are really bad arguments for banning pornography. I'm not going to discuss my personal views as to whether pornography should be banned or not. I'm going to do that in another video, but I want to outline what I think are some very bad arguments for banning pornography, and I think the sooner these arguments stop being made, the better, because all it does is makes people who are pro-banning pornography look stupid. The human trafficking argument. Human trafficking is sad. Human trafficking is awful. And it's something which is becoming more and more of an issue in the modern day, especially with things like illegal immigration and other ways of moving, forgive the term, but human cargo around the world. However, I don't think, and there is statistics to back this up, the porn industry is any worse than most other industries are for tolerating human trafficking. In fact, I can make a very good argument that the porn industry is in fact better for preventing human trafficking. I'll use the example of Twitter and Pornhub. Pornhub, some years before Twitter, got rid of, or to the best of their ability, got rid of all human trafficking, child pornography off their site. And it's the same for most other main porn websites. Whereas Twitter only took the child pornography off Twitter when Elon Musk bought it. And you can find lots of examples of this type of thing. For example, the fast fashion industry is rife with human trafficking. Most clothes that you can buy off the peg at a store that is what would be described as fast fashion will say something like Boohoo, In the Style, and those type of brands. Most of those stores will be using modern day slaves that have been trafficked either to the UK or are forced to work for no wages to make clothes. This is very sad, and the problem with this argument is it doesn't stand up anywhere else. The fact that human trafficking is rife in the fast fashion and beauty industry does not stop anybody from wearing fast fashion and engaging in that industry. This is a problem because the fashion industry, in terms of human trafficking, is probably worse than the porn industry. And the problem people have when they make the argument for banning porn based on human trafficking is it's a logical inconsistency. Why are you for banning porn? Because it's got human trafficking, but you're not for banning fast fashion or beauty products. The hypocrisy of this argument isn't the main issue with the argument, though. The main issue with the argument is that saying porn should be banned because it's rife with human trafficking it's not really a very strong place to argue from, because what it implies is if the porn industry isn't rife with human trafficking, it should be legal. And this is the problem I've got with people who make the human trafficking argument as a main reason for banning porn. This one is one I've heard quite a lot, and I think Ben Shapiro wrote a book discussing this topic, and I haven't read the book, or I haven't read the whole thing, but I hear it a lot from people. Porn makes young men more likely to become rapists or commit other sexual crimes. The problem with this is it's very logically inconsistent. Most men in Western Europe, probably upwards of 95%, regularly watch pornography. And the issue I've got here is, though it is true that sexual crimes have gradually gone up since any date you can pick, maybe the 1950s, but it's a bit more nuanced than that. It seems, by looking at the available data, which I will link, or I'll try and link, sexual crimes have been going down since the 80s, where they hit a peak. And the problem with the reasoning here is, if porn was a significant factor in determining whether a young man would become a rapist or commit other sexual crimes, logically, since the widespread availability of internet pornography, you would see an increase in sexual crimes. The problem here is, I can be persuaded that sexual crimes have been going up, but the porn argument doesn't address other factors such as mass immigration and other issues that are more relevant and probably more impactful of the overly sexualizing of the culture. I think making the argument that porn makes young boys into rapists or makes them more likely to commit other sexual crimes is quite a bold claim to make. And I'm not saying that porn doesn't have any impact in determining whether some men will become rapists or not. However, I think making this argument exclusively for banning porn is, there are lots of other factors that anybody could point to that are also significant factors in determining whether a young man will end up as a rapist. Again, what I'd like to say here is, making the argument porn is likely to make young men into rapists is also not very ideologically foolproof. Because what you're essentially saying is, if porn didn't have this problem, it should be perfectly legal. And I think this is an issue because most people who are advocating the banning of pornography are doing it from an ideological ground or a religious ground, which is fair enough. Right, this argument is probably the worst argument I've ever heard for pornography. It's degrading to women. And though I may or may not agree with you, the problem with this argument is it's very easily countered, because most porn stars, if they're asked this question, because they get asked this question quite a lot, say, oh, I feel empowered by pornography and doing pornography. So now we've addressed the porn stars, we can get into other women who watch pornography. Apparently it can degrade them and make them feel bad about themselves. I'm not saying this is true, but let's assume that it is for argument's sake. There are lots of industries that make women feel uncomfortable and have unrealistic expectations. Social media is one of them. And it's not a logical argument, or I don't hear anyone arguing to ban social media because it's bad for women. I mean, I can be persuaded by that argument, but not many people make it. I've briefly touched on this with the human trafficking point, but most legitimate porn sites and most industries most legitimate porn sites, or most of the porn that most people watch, is not child abuse. Child abuse is already illegal to watch. Anyone caught with material containing child abuse will be put in prison. And as previously stated, most porn sites, such as Pornhub, made an effort to get rid of the child pornography on their platforms, requiring all members, or all content producing members, to be verified. So I don't think the child abuse argument stacks up very well. What reasoning would work to ban porn, or what arguments would work? I think any argument that starts with young men and says, yeah, porn is really bad for young men, it stops them or makes it harder for them to have meaningful relationships is probably making a good argument. Pardon me. But I'm going to leave this topic for another video. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to improve your public speaking skills, please check out my Locals channel and feel free to check me out on Twitter.